Hello cruel world, my name is Dr Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. You can call me the ominous Sohominous. And today we're diving into the chilling case of Jeffrey Dahmer, one of America's most notorious serial killers.
I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons.
His gruesome crimes shocked the world and left us questioning the depths of human depravity. So get ready and buckle in for a wild ride into Dahmer's mind. As your friendly neighborhood forensic psychiatrist, I'll be sharing my professional diagnosis of his mental state. You might think you know what creates a serial killer, but Dahmer's childhood holds some surprises. What seemingly normal experiences could twist a young mind towards such darkness? Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. On the surface, his early years seemed relatively ordinary. He grew up in a middle-class family with both parents present. He attended public schools and even had a younger brother. But as we peel back the layers, we start to see the cracks in this facade of normalcy. Dahmer's father, Lionel, was often absent due to his work as a research chemist. His mother, Joyce, struggled with mental health issues and was known to be attention-seeking and highly strung. So this combination left young Jeffrey feeling emotionally neglected and isolated from an early age. One of the most intriguing aspects of Dahmer's childhood was his fascination with animal bones. At around the age of 4, he began collecting dead animals from the roadside and dissecting them. Now, childhood curiosity about anatomy isn't uncommon, but Dahmer's interest went way beyond typical exploration. He seemed fixated on the internal structures of these animals, a behavior that would later evolve into his horrific crimes against humans. As Dahmer entered adolescence, his parents' marriage began to crumble. And there was this constant tension at home, coupled with his growing awareness of his homosexuality in a less accepting era. All of this likely intensified his feelings of alienation. Dahmer started drinking heavily in his teens, using alcohol as a way to numb his emotions and cope with his inner turmoil. One particularly troubling incident occurred when Dahmer was 16. He fantasized about rendering a male jogger unconscious and using his body for his own perverse gratification. While Dahmer didn't act on this fantasy, it's marked the beginning of his violent, actual thoughts combining with his dissociative tendencies. Now, it's crucial to note that many people experience difficult childhoods and traumatic events, and obviously they don't become serial killers. However, in Dahmer's case, these experiences seem to have interacted with his unique psychological makeup in a particularly toxic way. As we look at Dahmer's background, we can see the gradual erosion of normal social and emotional development. Each seemingly minor event or circumstance chipped away at his ability to connect with others and value human life. It's a stark illustration of how adult psychopathology often has its roots in childhood experience. So childhood trauma can warp a person's psyche, but Dahmer's case takes this to an extreme. His crime spree reveals a man not just killing, but ritualistically dismembering his victims. So let's examine the timeline of Dahmer's crimes, which began in 1978 when he was just 18 years old. So his first victim was Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker that Dahmer picked up and took to his parents' house. After killing Hicks, Dahmer dismembered the body and scattered the remains in the woods. For nearly a decade after Hicks' murder, Dahmer didn't kill again. But in 1987, his murderous urges resurfaced, and the frequency and brutality of his crimes escalated rapidly. Over the next 4 years, Dahmer would claim the lives of 16 more victims, mostly young men and boys from minority communities. And I would say that it's very unusual for there to be such a big gap between the first killing and the rest, because usually there's such an intense pleasure that the serial killer gets that they chase that high very quickly. So to me, this suggests that maybe Dahmer did not particularly enjoy his first killing and might have even had a degree of remorse that stuck with him for a while, for a decade. And of course there is another explanation, which is that there are other killings in between his first one and the one that happened apparently a decade later, but we don't know about them.
One time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. I had no intention of hurting him. When I woke up in the morning, he had a broken rib here, I was heavily bruised. Apparently I had beaten him to death with my fists.
And you have no memory
I
of it?
have no memory of it.
What's particularly disturbing from a psychological standpoint is the evolution of Dahmer's modus operandi. He didn't just kill his victims, he engaged in increasingly bizarre and gruesome acts. Dahmer began experimenting with chemical preservations of the body parts, and he attempted crude lobotomies on living victims, and he even practiced cannibalism. So to me, this escalation suggests a deepening of Dahmer's pathology over time. It's as if each crime wasn't quite satisfying enough for his twisted desires, and it pushed him to more extreme acts in search of gratification. From a psychiatric perspective, this pattern is indicative of a profound disconnection from normal human empathy and an intensifying need for control and possession of his victims. This behavior is sometimes seen in organized serial killers and can be linked to a desire for total domination over the victim. So when I look at the reason that people either commit rituals during the killings or they keep trophies, there's a couple of different factors. Sometimes they feel a spiritual connection. So it's not just carrying out a brutal murder in their mind, it's like they're entering some sort of deep, natural, spiritual process. And other times it's to prolong the pleasure. So they take trophies home, they take a little reminder of the killing so they can relive the pleasure at a later date. Sometimes they even masturbate over these objects. So how did Dahmer manage to evade capture for so long? I think at least part of this answer lies in his ability to manipulate and to charm. So despite his internal turmoil, Dahmer could present a facade of normalcy to the outside world. And let's remember, he held down jobs, he maintained an apartment, and if he needed to, he could be charming. So this ability to compartmentalize and maintain is what we call a mask of sanity, and is often seen in psychopaths and in sociopaths. Dahmer also targeted marginalized individuals, often from the LGBTQ+ community or racial minorities. Sadly, the disappearance of these victims didn't always receive the attention it deserved from the law enforcement, allowing Dahmer to continue his spree unchecked. I think another factor in Dahmer's evasion of justice was his cunning use of excuses and explanations when he was confronted. So in one infamous incident, police returned a drugged, naked victim to Dahmer after he convinced them it was merely a domestic dispute. So as a forensic psychiatrist, I've seen plenty of disturbing cases, trust me, but Dahmer stands out for his sheer depravity. His own explanations for his crimes paints a picture of a man driven by an intense, twisted desire for companionship. It's a chilling reminder that even the most horrific acts can stem from disturbingly human needs. Dahmer often stated that he killed because he wanted to create zombies, compliant sexual partners who would never leave him. This bizarre motive reveals a profound loneliness and an inability to form normal human connections. So from a psychiatric standpoint, this points to severe attachment issues. Now, something I want to address is whether Dahmer's repressed sexuality had contributed to any of his behaviors. And I think the answer is yes. I think that he had this own discomfort with his sexuality. And we've got to remember that around this entire period of time, gay people were very much judged, and it was around the time of the AIDS epidemic, which adds another layer of judgment from other people. So I think that he had this repressed sexuality that he was very much ashamed of, and it's almost like he was striking out and harming a little part of himself that he saw in other people. So in the 80s, after being arrested for several sexual assaults on underage victims, Dahmer was diagnosed with a schizoid personality disorder. And I think this is really interesting. So it's a personality disorder that I've seen in my line of work, though very rarely when working with offenders. So what is schizoid personality disorder? Well, the typical features include a lack of interest in social relationships, a tendency towards being solitary or having a sheltered life, and a secretiveness and an emotional coldness and apathy. So people with this disorder are often described as being withdrawn or aloof, and they create a rich, elaborate, often fantasy world. So people with schizoid personality disorder often have feelings of indifference towards other people. So they literally don't care whether people like them or not. They wouldn't go to a party, but if they were dragged along to a party, they'd be sitting in a corner by themselves, not interacting with others. But crucially, they would be indifferent. They wouldn't want to be part of the party. So that's very different from just being shy. From a professional standpoint, I'd say Dahmer's core motivation stemmed from a toxic mix of loneliness, a need for control, and a profound inability to connect with others in a healthy way. And his crimes were, in essence, a grotesque attempt to create the intimacy and permanence he couldn't achieve in normal relationships. In the end, Dahmer's story shows us the dark depths of the human mind. It's a chilling reminder that evil isn't always obvious. Sometimes it wears a normal face and lives next door. That's why mental health awareness is crucial. We need to shine a light on the shadow of the psyche, not to excuse, but to prevent and protect. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if there's any particular true crime stories that you'd like me to cover, then let me know in the comments section below. Bye for now.